welcome to episode 24 of the Fifth Meeple Board Game Podcast. We're a group of diverse friends who offer our takes on the latest and greatest board games to hit our table. I'm your host, Daniela, the Goofy Noob, and I am joined today by the Collector.
Hey, this is David.
And the Intellectual Introvert.
Hi, everyone. This is Chris.
And the Deluxeifier.
This is Pete. Hello, everybody.
In today's episode, we reach into our bag of tricks and head to medieval France, finding followers, snatching citizens, and tricking out trading stations as we wiggle our wagons around Orleans. Then it's off to the Andes to acquire alpacas, wig out on wool, and toil the workhorse in our warehouse as we try to survive in the Altiplano. And finally, because we just can't help ourselves, we'll take it to the next level, pitting these games against each other in our ultimate showdown, which we call the Battle of the Funnest. But first, David, what's our topic of discussion today?
Yeah, so the topic of discussion today is, do you guys believe in mulligans and letting them happen during a board game, aka letting people redo their turn after they have completely taken a turn? Because maybe they missed something, or they're like, hey, can I take all this back? Do you guys believe in this or not?
I feel I actually really can't stand this, to be honest with you. But I feel like our table does it a little bit, probably more often than we should. And we think, there was 10 actions that I had to take on my turn, and I missed 2 of them. And it's kind of like, we're already back at you. No.
Yeah, I think if you realize it before your turn is over, and certainly before someone else starts to process their turn, there are certain things you can't do. I didn't mean to do that, and you've already seen the card you're getting. Well, tough, you're taking it, even if that truly wasn't what you meant to do. I tend to be a forgiving person. Irritating, yes. Stretching out the game, yes. But sometimes I make a mistake partway through, too, and so I give grace and hope to get it.
Yeah, one thing when you're teaching a new game to new players, it's always good to give a little bit chance to take back, a turn, or maybe go over something that they missed. When we're playing, we usually don't play too competitively. I'm there to play a game and have some fun. If somebody makes a mistake, we try to correct it, because sometimes you actually make legitimate mistakes. So you go back and correct that. I know in the last game that we were playing, I missed some triggers or plays, and I'm like, no, just move on, and I'm fine with that. So I don't mind doing it as long as it's not habitual. And as others said, once you get past a point, it's 2 people have taken their turn and they're, I forgot to do this. Yeah. It's one thing if it's a coin or something like that.
Well, I think to your point, to help people out during the gameplay is helpful. Did you take that? Did you take that?
Yeah.
That's always helpful.
Yeah, I think my take on it is I kind of believe that, hey, everybody kind of gets one at the table, no matter almost what the game is. But if I see somebody doing it more than once, unless they haven't really played it, like kind of Pete was saying, but if you played it a lot, it's maybe let one, but it also depends, I guess, on the type of game. If it's a really fast-playing game, if the turn is a chain action of a chain action, and then we have to figure out how to redo it all. I used to play Roomy Cube with my grandma and, her friends, and I remember, because you can mix up the whole board and kind of get tiles to kind of go together, and then at the end, sometimes there would be, one tile that they somehow couldn't figure out how to do it, and so we'd have to figure out how to put the board back together, and I think that's, to me, the most annoying part is when there's a lot of pieces or a lot of things moving around, and then you're like, oh, actually, I didn't want to do that. And then we have to try to go back and remember what you did to take back your turn. So that's kind of my take on it.
So would you be more forgiving then with someone that, I forgot to take $1, and then they just take $1?
Oh, yeah, that's fine.
It's my turn to go around 2 people.
Versus how it has to get stacked. If I got to take a card, but then David forgot to take a card out of the deck I'm looking at now. That's the annoying thing, because I got to put the thing that I wanted back then.
I'm much more hey, if you're going to take a coin because you forgot, I don't really care. It's more of let's redo your whole turn again.
Do you tell anybody, or you just take the coin when no one's looking?
I think you can just do it.
Yeah.
I don't know. At this table here sitting right now, I don't have a problem with anybody doing the little slide of hand or something like that. There's other people I would have been concerned that we played with before that I'm you just took 2 and you're supposed to take 1.
Yeah. And I also think I'm more prone to let certain people do mulligans versus other people.
Okay.
That makes sense.
All right.
AKA, I don't let Chris do it ever.
Can you rate? Yeah, can you rate this?
That's the real thing.
And Pete, I'm no.
Not me.
All right, David, thanks. Those are our opinions on do-overs or mulligans, but we'd love to know what you guys all think out there and what you have to say. Let us know by sending us an email at thefifthmeeple@gmail.com. We'd love to have you follow us on Instagram, Facebook, or on BGG, or check out our website at thefifthmeeple.com. And before you forget, why not take a second to hit the subscribe button so you never miss a show? If you want to help us grow, one of the best ways to do that is to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. And if you do, we just might read it on our future show. But as always, thank you guys all so much for listening. Well, I think I hear the monks ringing their bell. Ring out your dead. So let's take a really short vow of silence before we start roaming the streets of Orleans.
Orleans is a 2 to 5 player bag building and mild action programming game set in medieval France. Over the course of 18 rounds, you must gather followers and deploy them wisely through trade, construction, and science. At the start of each round, players draw chits representing their followers from inside their bag to populate their personal market. Play then proceeds to the planning phase where you simultaneously decide where and how to deploy your followers, ultimately determining the actions available to you that round. In the action phase, players alternate turns activating one action at a time, after which they return those followers to their bag. Some actions allow you to gain additional followers into your bag, most of which also advance you along a tech track, earning additional bonuses like goods tiles, money, special abilities, or an increase in the number of followers you can draw at the start of each round. Other actions allow you to move your merchant token around a map of Orleans, collecting goods and building trading stations that will earn you points at the end of the game. You can also dispatch your followers to do beneficial deeds where they'll stay for the rest of the game, earning you a small reward and ultimately thinning your bag. At the end of a round, one of 6 events occurs. Some cost you money or goods, some reward you for your past labors, and some inflict a plague that could cost you a follower. And if you ever can't pay the related price, you will suffer torture. At the end of the game, points are earned for the money you have remaining, the goods you've managed to retain, and for a combination of the trading stations you've built, the citizens you've collected, and your development level. The player with the most points survives the impending plague, must no longer be tortured, and, most importantly, wins the game. Orleans was designed by Rainer Stockhausen and was first published in 2014 by DLP Games.
All right, guys, welcome to Orleans, where craftsmen, monks, knights, and everyone else are just begging for someone to follow, at least until the plague makes its moot point. So tell me, what part of Orleans do you guys think is the piece de resistance?
The first thing that stands out about Orleans is the bag building aspect of it. You know, I think I got into this hobby. I played Quacks of Quedlinburg first, and I remember, you know, that bag pulling mechanism and being like, oh man, you know, I really liked it. And so I went out there and I wanted to find every game that I could that had this bag pulling mechanism. And so the 2 games we talked about tonight are some of the games that I collected after. Orleans is one of them, and I still like it. I mean, I like the aspect of going into your bag, hoping you get what you want, and then not always getting what you want. Yeah, hearing Chris repeat complaint from around the table. Like, I can't believe I got this piece. You know, I still think that's one of the highlights of this game is just that kind of random chancy, but not dice rolling in a different kind of way that I kind of like.
I don't know why it is, but bag building seems easier for me to grasp with respect to thinning your bag as opposed to a deck builder and thinning your deck. It's the same concept, I think, but something about when they're in your bag and you can, I don't know if it's physical or what it is, but I find it easier in my brain to grasp the concept of doing that thinning, which I think is really important in Orleans because there are certain things that you want. For example, the scholars, you want them to move up that track, and then as soon as you get them, they're just like, okay, these guys are useless if you get more than one in there. And so you do have to thin it as you go along, and my mind, for whatever reason, can do that with a bag as opposed to a deck.
The one reason I like this game is it's got a real clean design. There's not a lot of complexity into it. You're pulling your chips from the bag, you're putting them out and getting more resources. And as you alluded to, you know, you ramp up and there's a certain amount of time that you can use those chips. And then you do have to start getting rid of them. And really, that's the core of the game. And I think that's what makes this so popular is that there's not a lot of extra fluff with it. Mm-hmm. You know, there's some events in that, but they're almost non-events to me. But I think it's just a nice, clean design. Yeah. It's very simple.
That's one of the things I was going to comment on, too. I think the theme translates. It's very much you go, you buy, you get people, you place, you get goods, you get services, things happen in the time sequential. You either have the plague or you can't buy something or you have, it's just very thematic. And I think that really comes through in this game for sure.
Yeah, the other thing, too, is other than when we play and Chris is playing, usually the scores are close. Chris always has like 50 points more than everybody else on this game.
That's not taking an extra thing, you know, no one's watching the slides.
It's that non-take-back thing that we just talked about. But but I think, you know, when I looked at it, I recall the first time I played it, I was within a few points. And, you know, it was a simple enough concept to grasp. I'm not sure I'd call it so much engine building as, you know, you ramp up, get those resources, and then expend those resources or the chips. So, and lots of different ways to get points. I do like the multiple tracks that you can kind of go up, and there's a little bit of race to it as well. Yeah. But it doesn't take over the game The really core of the mechanic is that.
Yeah, really,
bag building.
everybody has a chance on some of those tracks, even though you may get an extra point for taking one of the little people off because you crossed a certain path first. Everybody has a chance to get all the way up that track or to do whatever they may need to do. But I think the other unique part of this game is you can come out thinking you have a certain way you want to play this game. I know last game I was like, I'm really going to go down this track. I'm going to try a totally different way to play this game, and it didn't work out at all. And I think to play some of the games like Orleans that we're going to talk about and then Altiplano later is the fact that I think you need to play these games a couple times in a row or within a month or something like that to really get your appetite wet, to really grasp the game and really think about other ways you may be able to play it. Because I think if you're just pulling this out randomly and you're kind of like, I'm just filling my board, I'm not really doing what I'm doing. I think I like these games because they make you kind of want to have almost like a little bit of a marathon with them a little bit, unless you're ready to just flip the table and be done with it. So
And I do feel like there are decisions to be made, maybe not about what to do, but when to do it. You're probably going to move up a certain amount on each of the tracks, but when you do it can be pretty impactful to getting to that first citizen, or I see David doing this, so okay, I'll go down a different track. I'm never going to be able to, stay ahead of him or something along those lines.
To me, also with this game, I think that it doesn't overstay its welcome, where some games tend to. I think this one, I'm always like, there's only 18 rounds. I'm always like, I wish there was one or two more turns. And I feel like the 18 rounds, it goes by really fast.
Mm-hmm.
I always feel like, really, we're halfway through that deck when I look over at the event cards and I'm looking at my engine and in my bag, and I'm like, I don't feel like I'm where I need to be.
Yeah, the turns are pretty quick too. I mean, there's a little bit of the time in between where, you're prepping for the next season or next event. But then, you pull out your chips, you put them out and you try to figure it out. And yes, it's pretty quick turns.
Mm-hmm.
There can be a little bit of AP there, but for the most part, you see what chits you have and you start to program them in. We did, I think, Pete, you and Dave figured out that you got to keep track of which chits were in place already and which ones, especially when you get like 7 or 8 that you're placing. If you're not doing something to keep track of which ones did I put on this time and which ones did I not, then that can get a little bit, oh my gosh, get into how do I redo my turn? Well, you can't at that point.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's relatively quick to figure out what you can do and a little bit of decision to say, okay, and what am I going to do?
Yeah, what we did, just so the listeners know, is when you have your chips down, you may not use those people every round, so they're going to be left on your board, and you draw from your bag and you lay out, you have 6 or 8 extra people that you can all place out. Well, what we do is we put them kind of either like right below or halfway, so which ones have been placed. They're what we call them locked in, and the other ones which are kind of you still might be doing some strategizing or planning or moving things around. So until you lock those in, that's kind of the way that we did it. I think it works well. That actually was one of my little dislikes about these types of games where stuff's on the board and you're trying to remember it, because that's a little mental overhead that you got to follow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What about, as we're playing, you guys, some of the good moments that you've had? Like, just if you can think of like one good time. I know when you do pull all the right things and it was what you needed, and in this game, depending on how far you've advanced up the night track, you can either take 5, 6, 7, 8 and fill your board with that many chits that you have pulled out. But if you ever pull out the right number of chits and you can put them in different places and you can take 3 or 4 actions on a turn, to me, that's a really satisfying event to happen during a round, because you get to do a ton of moves, and if they all work for you, you're gaining points in that round. It's when you can't do that, it becomes a little bit of frustrating. But for me, that was a really good moment.
Yeah, for me, plagues, even though they hurt when they happen, which I guess that's what a plague does. It hurts when it happens. That's a fun moment when you're reaching into that bag with a plague. You pull a chit out of your bag, and if it's not one of your initial 4 chits, that you just lose it.
Yeah.
Right. And just the tension of, okay, what am I pulling out of here? You can do some things to set yourself up to give yourself a better chance, but pulling that shit out and finding out it's one that you get to keep.
Yeah.
That's a pretty nice moment for what could otherwise be, okay, I just got this monk and now I just lost him.
And that's probably really that's probably like the furthest player interaction we all kind of have, right? Like together in this game. When you're kind of
I think you and I had a case where it was a matter of who's moving first to go and lay a trading station down, because we were in the same area of the board.
Yeah.
But yeah, for the most part, it's who gets higher on the track first, and there's not a lot of direct interaction in the game.
Right. All right, guys. So what is about Orleans that makes you want to send it off to the guillotine? I feel like there's everybody's a little bit like, there's some frustrations here during this game that we got to get it out. And Pete's jumping out the bit. Pete, what do you got?
Oh, well, the thing that I got is they're called the place tiles, and when you get to a certain level, you can actually take one of those tiles.
Right, because there's 1 and 2.
Yeah, there's two different levels, and I think some of those are overpowered. And I was reading some of the instructions in that, and there's actually a draft method where you can actually take them out, because I do feel like there are some that are a bit overpowered, and if you really know how to use them, Chris always grabs them. But I think they can really sway the game. Again, this is another one where I think a player who has played often is really going to beat a new player on the game, especially if you know what those tiles do.
100%.
Because I took one of them and it got me up the track real quick, but it really didn't feel like it did that much more for me.
And to that point, I feel like though, can they all be overpowered if you have the right things to go with them? Maybe they can't. There might be some that are a little more powerful, but a lot of them, if you get them, like you get the one where blues are wild and you don't go up the blue track to get a lot of blues in your bag, it's not going to be that powerful. Mm-hmm. If you get that and you say, I'm going to take this, the next 2 turns, I'm going to get some extra blues, all of a sudden it becomes a lot more powerful.
Yeah, so you have to play the card right for sure when you're playing it. I would have to go up on the night track and be able to have 8 chits come out to be able to hopefully pull some blues every single turn.
But or thin your bag to a certain amount to be able to do that. Or just, again, I think you increase your chances by putting those blues in there. If you go and you get the tech or the place or whatever that gets you, hey, I can do some really fancy things with scholars, well, then finally you can do something with your scholars other than curse at them whenever they come out. Right? Things like that. Now, the one that might be overpowered is the one I got the last 2 games. That was the gunpowder. Is as soon as you get that, all of a sudden you've got two extra spaces.
Yeah.
So if I can pull out 7, now you're pulling out 9.
Yeah.
And you can do a lot of stuff with it.
Yeah.
Well, and I think...
But there's a couple other ones too, though. I think that at that level 2, they're like, oh man, you can do some really powerful stuff with those level 2s.
Yeah, and I think that's why they have that where you can actually draft to pull them out of the game and take them out of the game.
Just for points' sake, I mean, Chris got 160 points in their last game, and the next closest person was David at 104. Like, there had to have been something there. All of us were close in points.
And for that record, I mean, on that game in particular, I think I didn't get any of those level 1 or level 2 tiles till almost the very end of the game. Like, I think round 15 and 16. Because I just didn't want to go up that path. I was trying to go up a different route. But I do agree that, the compounding of them from the beginning, I'd much rather draft them out of the game. I like playing with that variant personally.
But that is what I tried to do, though. I tried to get a 1 and a 2 tile really early. And that if I'm going to get some benefit from it, I get it as long as I possibly can. And then once I know what I've got, then I build the rest of my game around it.
Well, and then to Pete's point, if you have somebody that you're playing with that knows to do that, you're just smoking them out of the water like every single time. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, deal with it.
And the one thing about this game that I wish that I like about Altiplano that we'll be talking about is with Orleans, you take all your chits after a round and you put it back in the bag. With Altiplano, I like that you had the opportunity to clear your bag fully, because sometimes there's pieces in your bag that you're hoping to come out and they're never coming out like as much as you pull them. Maybe it takes 3 rounds and you're then finally pulling a red out or something like that if you can't move up certain tracks. But I wish this game would have that where you clear your bag and then re-energize it.
Yeah, Altiplano is more like a deck builder where you go to a discard pile, that little tray. But we'll get into that later when we get there. Yeah. But I kind of agree
and I
with
think
you.
Sometimes that's good, sometimes bad. I don't know that I would want that all the time.
Oh,
I think
really?
It depends. Yeah.
I really like that mechanic in Altiplano, though, because I know, because when you look in your bag, I know it's coming out. In this game, when I look at my bag, everything that I just played is going back in, and I'm like, no, I need that brown one. So,
I mean, you guys know what's coming. My biggest pet peeve in games is unequal turns. When you play this at a 4 or 5 player count, you're always going to have unequal turns because it's by 18 is the odd round number.
Unequal turns of who's going first.
And who's going first, yeah. And so in this game, I really do feel like there is a distinct advantage to going first on most rounds. And for the fact that, a lot of games, they would mitigate this by giving the 2 players maybe that don't get an opportunity to go first, either coins or some other kind of benefit to start the game. This game has nothing. So I do think that when you play a 4 or 5 player count, just be aware that if you're 4th or 5th, I think you're somewhat at a disadvantage most times.
I think especially at the end, too, where that's when
definitely
you're like, okay, who can get to that
Yep.
beneficial deeds board first? And it's whoever happens to start the game or whatever, was in the right place.
Because there's no battle, and I would like to see this, and maybe there's an expansion for it, but I would like to see a battle for that first player token coming out. That would solve this issue if you're not going to, have an additional benefit for the people at the back, especially when you just have 18 rounds and it's kind of a weird number.
Yeah, just a last little thing is the events that actually come out. I think they're kind of non-eventful. I mean, they give you little points. They didn't really seem that punishing. I know you mentioned before that you can get not thrown into the dungeon.
Get tortured, baby.
Get tortured, yeah. I know when I first played, I was worried a little bit about the money because that was one of the things they talked about, and it was really kind of a non-issue. I think you could just play it regularly and not really worry about it. I think the events are there. They're cool, but I don't know that they really add that much to me. You probably leave them out and you wouldn't even know, other than counting the rounds.
Yeah.
I think the ones that can lead to torture, for me, after you get past the first couple rounds of the game, you're probably going to be okay. And even early in the game, when you see it come out, okay, I know what I'm doing this round.
Yeah.
I have to go get it good.
Yeah, those events are aggravating because you could work for 3 rounds and get your grain, and then you're just giving it up because tax. I guess that's life. All right, so let's move on to the collector's corner. So, David, does Orleans fill the fields with francs, or is it more like a soggy croissant?
Yeah, so right now, if you're looking for this game, you can go on Amazon and it's available there. So country kind of wide. You can get it for $59.99 currently. And that's kind of, I was looking across the board even at local board game stores that you might go to. And that's about average on the price if you're going to buy it brand new. But if you're looking for this and you don't mind buying used games, I think that's the route to go again on this one. Used on BGG right now, you can find it for around $30. I know if you're looking on Facebook Marketplace, maybe in your local area, somebody might be giving away this game because it did come out in 2014. So there are some copies available definitely out there. And I think you can I've seen it at least for like $25-$40, somewhere between there. So you could definitely save some money on this one if you do want to go that used route. But, it's a popular game. They just came out with, another expansion that just came out here about a couple weeks ago called The Plague.
The Plague. It's an even bigger one than the ones we've experienced in the game.
$60 seems high, though.
I agree.
For it's some wooden meeps and a bunch of cardboard.
Yeah.
I mean,
And a lot of cardboard
Yeah,
chips.
a lot of that's true.
Yikes.
it's held steady there, though, for a while at that price point.
Speaking of which,
I know,
setup
I
can be.
know.
We didn't mention setup, but setup
Except
can
for
be a
both
little
of
bit
these.
of a bear.
Yeah. Nightmares.
Yeah.
It's like, while you're here 10 minutes early, set up this game. David leaves the room. All right, great discussion so far. So before we say au revoir, any final thoughts? So David, is this game something you think is worth the investment as the collector?
Yeah, like I said before, I got into this game because I really liked Quacks, so Quedlinburg, and I was looking for more bag pullers, and this is one that definitely comes up if you're searching for bag pullers. I do think this is a good game as far as like staying on my wall. I do think it's definitely a little bit more complicated than Quacks, but if you're kind of going down that board game route and that board game journey, this might be a game that you would like to add to your collection if you really like Quacks and you're looking for something else to kind of satisfy that. But this one is definitely a lot meatier, so just know that going in, it's not as light as Quacks by quite a bit.
Yeah, I would say for myself as a newbie in this, going on a year, I wouldn't recommend this for new people. As David kind of has said, I would stick with Quacks for a little bit, get the idea of bag pulling, get the theme and the mechanics of it all out, kind of understand what you're doing, make your moves, and then maybe you could move on to this after 6 months to a year or so. Pete, how about you? As the deluxeifier, what are you deluxeifying this game? Can you deluxeify anything? Because everything's fitting on that board with those cardboard cutouts.
Yeah, actually, the big upgrade that I would do are the geek up bits. They really change them from the wood or the cardboard chips to actually tiles. They're always better to play with. I don't know if you guys played with my copy of Quacks, but I have the geek up bits. They are wonderful. Okay. I mean, you put them in the bag, you can actually mix them, and I think that's one of the other things about a bag builder, especially when they're real thin cardboard slots. Sometimes they don't feel like they're mixing as well, but when you have the actual
like the tile or plastic.
The tiles, they just feel a lot better. Pulling them out of the bag, it just makes the experience a lot better. The upgrade, I did a quick look. It's about $35, and you get about 125 pieces of those. So there's quite a few, as you mentioned before. There's a lot of cardboard with it, but that would be obviously the first upgrade that I would do if you like the game. Try the game a couple times and decide if it's something that you want to keep. And if so, I mean, you're paying about the price of the game just to upgrade those bits.
Yeah, so if you're pulling this out a lot, that might be worth it for you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Chris, intellectual introvert, how are you feeling about this game?
Yeah, we mentioned earlier there's not a huge amount of player interaction. So from the introverted side, nothing that puts you outside of the comfort zone. From the intellectual side, it's not super hard, but at the same time, as you said, it's not super easy. So I think it's a nice middle ground to where you want to do something where there's a puzzle there, but it's not so hard that you're sitting there just staring at the board saying, okay, what do I do next?
Yeah.
There's a puzzle there, figure it out. And you can do some things. David likes to play this way where I'm not going to go this route. I'm going to try a different route, see what I can do. There are a lot of opportunities to do that. I'm going to go up on the Craftsman track, and we're going to try to win that way. And again, I mentioned getting the different tech tiles or places, and hey, let's see what I get this time. Grab something different, unless gunpowder's there, and I'll grab gunpowder. but if not, I'll grab something different. Then okay, I'll see what I can do with that and try to make it work. So it's a fun puzzle there without, again, racking your brain too hard.
Yeah. And well, I think you racked your brain hard though, because again, 60 points over us was pretty nuts. So you figured it out. You figured out this game. All right, guys. Well, I think I see a dude in one of those beak plague masks coming our way, so it's probably a good time to end this discussion, and Chris is tired. So we'll be back after a short break to start climbing around the Altiplano.
Altiplano is a 2 to 5 player worker placement, contract fulfillment, and bag building game set in the South American Andes, aka the Altiplano. The modular game board is comprised of 7 different areas placed randomly in a circle. Each area is populated with certain goods or cards and permits you to take certain actions while located there. At the start of each round, players draw chits from their bag equal to their development level, then simultaneously distribute them on their player board, ultimately determining the actions available to them that round. Players then alternate turns, taking one action at a time and moving either before or after the action, or not at all. You always get 1 free movement per round, but must spend food to move more than that. And if you buy another cart, you can travel even farther. At many locations, you can trade certain goods to receive other goods, or spend goods to purchase cards, giving you more resources, opportunities for bonus points, or orders that again earn you points if fulfilled. Other areas allow you to sell goods to get money, build roads to increase the number of chits you draw each round, or buy extensions to your board, which give you new abilities, some of which are the only way to get certain types of materials. You can also store some of your goods into your warehouse to earn points for each completed row. In all cases, you can only take actions if you have the required goods on your player board assigned to that area. After taking an action, spent or earned goods are placed into your cart, which is dumped back into your bag once it's empty. The game ends after the last extension tile is added to the market, or when all goods and cards have been removed from at least one of the play areas. The player with the most points wins the game and gets to shave the alpaca. Altiplano was designed by Rainer Stockhausen and was published in 2017 by DLP Games.
Here we are in the Andes Mountains, somewhere between Bolivia and Peru. So we are growing cacao, fishing in Lake Titicaca, say that 10 times fast, and doing our best to flourish in some pretty tough circumstances. So what it is about Altiplano that makes you feel like a Bahama llama, assuming that's a good thing?
You know, to me, I'm going to just come out there and say it. I think this is a really open kind of board game, meaning that when you start this game, and it might not be for everybody, but I feel like there's not a lot of direction, especially if you're a new player. Because when you look at kind of what you can do, especially when the modular board is set up, it's kind of like an open world. You're like, oh, I need to do all these things, but how do I go about doing it? I think that, to me, I love that kind of thing, but other people might find that very intimidating and see that as a negative, because I don't feel like the game gives you a lot of direction. But if you're somebody that's just like, hey, I'm just going to jump into a sandbox, that's what I think this game feels like every time I jump in there. It's like, look at the sandbox. How do I go make brick?
Well, and I think to your point, David, I mean, the roll tiles that you get at the beginning, whoever your person is that you're working towards, to me, it's an aggravation, but I understand your point as well. It could be a good thing where you're getting this person, and that's the track you're on, really, for the game, because that's a move that you can make, and that's what you're focused on, and that's what your resources are going to be for that entire game. So you have to make a way with that beginning piece, and that's where you're at, because you're not going to be able to get all the tiles and all the chits and all the goods in your bag. You got to adapt to it. So I think your point's valid.
I think that really feeds into replayability, which we'll talk about as we square these off. But replayability, for me at least, for this game, is off the charts because, again, there's certain things you're going to get at the beginning, but also based on those tech tiles or whatever they're called, when you get those, that's going to define what you can and can't do. Or when you don't get them, it may completely just say, okay, you're never going to get silver. You're never going to get whatever
exactly.
because you didn't buy that tile. And now you just, you're not going that direction, which every single time you play it, it's like, okay, there's different things that are available, different things that aren't. I gotta build my path around this particular circumstance.
Right, and money's tight in that essence too, because if to buy those tech tiles, you need money, and if you're not getting money, you're not getting to spend it.
Yeah, the two things that I really like about the game are the modular boards. I think that really adds to that, variability of the setup. You guys also mentioned the unique starter players, because there's sometimes you're just not going to get that one component. You really got to figure out how to play around that. And the other big thing, and Daniela, we talked about this really briefly, is I do like that when you play those tiles, they go into your little cart and they stay there until your bag's actually empty. That is really more of it's like a deck builder in disguise using a bag builder, because that's more of the way that a flow of a deck builder would be. You'd have your deck, it goes to your discard. Then once you have to draw and you're out, you fill that and you pull more. I do like deck builders. So I think, that's a plus for me with this game.
And you mentioned the modular board, so I'll just jump in since he mentioned that. I remember playing one of the games where I realized that what was next to something else on the previous game wasn't next to something else in the next game. And that doesn't sound like a big deal, but the way you move in this game, you can move 1 time 3 spaces, which means you can get anywhere because there's 7 spaces. And then if you don't have a cart, you can move 1 space. In the one game we played, I was able to combo these 2 things that I needed that worked really well together, these 2 spaces, because one was right next to another. I get to where I need to go, and I move 1. And in the next game we played, it was just 1 more space away. And I couldn't make that work for the life of me because I couldn't just do that one little movement, which changed the game completely for what I was able to
change
put
your attitude too.
That's it.
Yeah. No, I think, speaking of the layout, I think the layout in this game, this was back in February, I believe one of my cardboard crushes. Not so much anymore. I'm over it. But I believe this game is just really beautifully laid out. I love the tiles. I love the pieces. I think, again, for this game, that the theme does come out in this where you're buying. It's a little bit of like commerce. You're buying, you're selling, you're trying to combo things to make it work for you, and selling pieces of whatever you have in your bag to, further whatever you're doing in this game. And I just really think it is whoever designed this game, big props to you because I think it's really, really neat.
So the same guy that designed Orleans designed this game.
Okay, well, he used all browns in Orleans.
Yeah. Well, the same guy that did the art for Orleans did the art for this game.
Interesting.
Yeah. How can I make this game more complicated?
Yeah. And then it was like, turn it up to 11 on a volume of 10.
Speaking of which, there's a puzzle in here, right? And figuring out what to do here. And again, that could be a good thing or a bad thing depending how your brain is. I've mentioned probably with things that I'll cut out of this episode in that, man, my brain is not working today. And if we were playing Altiplano today, I would struggle because it's a brain burner. Yeah. It's a brain burner, right? But I also feel like, hey, once you understand what's going on and it clicks in your brain again, okay, now I can go, I get it. Or maybe you understand what you're capable of doing in that particular game. But man, that first time you play it or the first time you played it in a while, what a brain burner that is. Yeah.
Even though, again, this is another game that you're smoking us on. So I think you have it in with this designer. I think you've cracked the code.
On this one too?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. The one game we played, 180.
I remember the one game, yeah.
There's been a couple. 180 to like 90 something.
I don't think I played in that game.
It's in the bag.
David, you won the last one at 146.
See?
Mog got 60. Tough.
Yeah, he didn't do well.
Was he even playing that game?
That's funny.
The other thing I do like about this, and you guys kind of alluded to it earlier, was it is more asymmetric than you think. Because it seems like you start with the same stuff, but like you said, there's different little player cards, but every time I think it's just really different based off the tiles you get because it really does limit you. So if you're not used to a game where not everything is always available after the start of the game, this game is not your cup of tea, but I personally love it because every time it is a brand new puzzle.
Yeah.
Because you're like, wow, last time I could get silver, this time I'm never going to get silver ever.
Unless you get that card, that you can get the one piece.
Yeah. And so then it's like, how do I maximize my turns if I can't produce silver or get my hands on anything?
And I like that puzzle within the puzzle, like you're saying, because I like that when you can look at some of those cards, whether it's, there's 3 different decks on this game that you can look through and buy stuff out of. You can go there and buy a silver if I know I need to get this because I need to get coins and I need 3 coins every single time I play that silver coin. Yeah. So that's really interesting point. And again, every time you pull in this game out, it's kind of like a new game.
Yeah, you got to watch what's available in that buying location so you add to your board and, so you don't get locked out of those particular things. Because I know in the last game that we were playing, I was like, man, I just need this one component to fill this order. And if I can't do it, and guess who's taking all of the Cacao or
I have no idea who that is. I have no idea.
But
we were all
fortunately, I was
fighting
able
for
to
that and glass and everything.
Yeah, I was able to sneak it in and grab what I needed to, but then those resources were gone. So you do have to be paying attention to what other people are doing, which I think you have to do more so than in Orleans.
Yeah. And you got to fill your warehouse in this too. I mean, you got to get points every single way you can. The first time we played, not filling that, Chris, you were slamming that warehouse, just filling it to capacity, which really, I think helped, but you were getting so much product and able to fill that and knowing when to fill that warehouse and, the corn, trying not to get that on the first one. I mean, there's just like a lot of really cool, again, puzzles in this game that makes it really interesting.
Yeah, in that game you're talking about, I can remember I had my bag size was just perfect to where I knew everything was coming out of my bag every time, and I had it set up to where on each turn I would create certain things. I would put that many things into my warehouse from the last time, and then it'd just go right back in my bag, just keep doing that, and just points after points after points. And I think I was doing it with glass, which is the most valuable material, and it was just I finally got to the point where it's just a powerful engine I could just keep doing.
Yeah.
Piggybacking on what Pete was saying earlier, I do think you do have to pay attention to a lot of what other players are doing and their powers. If other people are all going after the same resource, or you see that there are different things on the map where people have an easier access to, so you see races starting to form, and sometimes I will purposely try to go after stuff that other people are really not going to, or they're not really equipped to go to at that time. So sometimes you can see races starting to form when you play, 4 or 5 players after certain goods. And so sometimes you want to zig when other people are zagging. And I think that's what I did well last time, because I think a lot of you guys went after contracts, and I almost completely avoided contracts last time and got my points through other means. But you can see things form more in this game just by looking at what other people can do and what their powers are going after. So, yeah.
All right, so anything about Altiplano that really winds your wool in the wrong direction? I think, as we play this, I would say overall that nobody here at this table overtly hates this game or anything like that. But there's some things in here that, man, if you get going on the wrong track, on the wrong path, you're going to be frustrated. I mean, we've talked about at a high level because we're up in the Andes. A lot of just the things that you need this 5,000 foot view overlooking the table and looking at what everybody's doing. You got to be really involved in this game. For me, one of the things that we've been talking about is those beginner cards. Even though I don't hate this part of the game, what irritates me sometimes is that somebody could be having glass or Kako or something that has a lot of points to it, and Kako doesn't. But whatever, glass and
but it can generate a lot of points though.
Yeah, and wool or something else can. But you can have some of these at your starting player, and those people are always going to be taking the high point chits, and you are never going to be able to kind of get those unless you're buying tech and you're getting those things and you're building those resources. So that's a really weird obstacle for me to navigate through, because I was very frustrated. I think in the last game I was like, I need a glass or I needed a silver or something, and I had to go and then buy it. It was just very it was a little too tight, where I don't think it was easily maneuverable, if that makes any sense at all.
No, I had that written down as one of mine. We said, hey, it's neat where you can't get certain goods, and so certain pieces are blocked off for you, but you're getting goals at the beginning of the game, only one of which you're actually choosing for yourself, right? You get 3 cards, you choose one, and then you pass one to either direction. Even at that point, maybe someone doesn't know what you can and can't get, but certain ones are harder. But when I get a goal that says, okay, I have to get ore, and then I have no means by which to get ore, that's just kind of frustrating, right? To where I have just no chance whatsoever of being able to get that. So that can be frustrating at times. And you can go different routes, but that's just kind of weird that here's your goal, you have no way to do that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's that double-edged sword with that. I also have that as a dislike as well. Just getting locked out of a resource. Yeah, you might be able to get one resource, but sometimes you need 2 resources. And I guess the other thing that frustrates me a little bit is the actual orders that you can get, not the ones that you could start with, but you go and you want to fulfill those orders. You can have one of those, and you got to fill that, and those are worth a lot of points. And if you're going after the easy ones, you're going to get stuck later. I know in the last game I played, I was looking through it, and there was 4 left. I'm like, well, which one can I do? And I really needed to do it. And like I said, that was the one component I really needed to try to find a way to get. And yeah, there are ways to get some of that stuff, but it can be real puzzly.
Yeah.
And the other thing is the timing of the game, because this is a game where you want to end with your bag spent. You want to get everything out of there that you can actually get out and get on the board and hopefully score points by putting it into your warehouse. That's part of the game. If you like that, that's great. I'm not sure that I love that.
Well, that warehouse was, now that I'm thinking of it, was the one where I said, hey, if they're right next to each other, and you can spend your one movement to get there. That's what was happening for me in that one game. I could go where I needed to I think it was a tree or something. I could turn my cacao into whatever I wanted to, and then just go to the warehouse and turn in what I got last time, and it was right next to it. Yeah. And I tried to do that the next game, and I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that is a frustration for me too. Is just how the way this game ends. There's no set ending other than running out of like resources on a certain card, or the tiles, coming in, they have to reach a certain point. And I do think that the game can go long, because if you do play with players, I mean, you could be playing for a long time if people don't know how to get certain materials just to clean off a board so that the game can end. I mean, sometimes you're just waiting there being like, I can't end this game because I can't take any of, so-and-so, but the person who can, or the people who can, don't know how to do it and, build their engine to end this game. And I do think the game can tend to run long.
Yes.
Which I do think it goes past its peak and doesn't come down on a good note always at the very end. So
I totally agree with that, David. The last couple of games we've played, whether it was at 3 or 5, we have played over 2 hours. And I agree. There's a point in there where you're like, oh my gosh, where are we at in this game? Because you don't really, because you can see if you take all the tiles off of one island, it's going, or peak or whatever they are, the game's done. But like you're saying, someone could end it, and there's one shit left on it, and you're like, just take this shit.
Yeah, just take it. Yeah, even though you don't need it, just take it, because
I know I'm going to get smoked in this game, but just take it and end the game. But yeah, I think you're right that it's overstayed its welcome a little bit there at the end for sure.
The game can be long, but there is a short game variant that I did find where you start with your worker and those resources, but you get 1 extra food, you get 1 extra money, and 1 extra cube. So instead of being able to move just one
your
spot,
cart.
you could you get another cart. And in addition to that, you start on 5, so you actually start with 5 chips out rather than 4. So it really kind of speeds up that first 2 rounds where you're trying to grind to get to that point. I'd like to play with that to see how it how it actually works, but I think the next game I play, I am going to try to do that and try it out.
Yeah, I mentioned my brain hurts with respect to my downside. Sometimes my brain just hurts a little too much. The puzzle can be really deep, and especially if you don't have things working or you can't get what you need, trying to figure out what you can do can really hurt. And again, there's certain people you might play with that will get halfway through a turn, I can't do that, and then they start over again. If it's the first time in a while, even if it's not your first time playing, if it's been a while since you took it off the shelf, I feel like it's going to take you a while again to get your brain locked around. So when we play this back to back, that's when I think it's easiest for us. Okay, this is our second play in a while now. We actually know what we're doing more than half of the game. We can really click. And the more we've played this, when we first played it the first time, a long time ago, we're like, why is this warehouse so big? Right? You're never going to be able to do this. And then the last couple of games we played, we've had some warehouses that are pretty full, or that have several rows.
Who's we?
Well, David and I.
Definitely a lot of mulligans in this one, though. A lot of do-overs.
Something that I'm surprised hasn't come up is some of the pieces. So the carts never stay together. The llama, his legs fall off every single time we try to move him. I mean, those are great ideas, but they just didn't work out. I don't know if it's the, they're too tight and they don't fold, or they're not tight enough, but... And then the last little thing, this is a nitpick, this is just my brain. How many times have I been stocking up on stone just to find out that my bonus is actually have the most ore? And I spent half the game trying to get all this stone. Thinking I'm doing awesome. Yeah. And I looked at it, I said, wait a minute, I can't even get ore. And I wasted half the game trying to do something.
Well, that's the worst moment for Chris, but that's one of my best moments. When Chris says halfway through, I've been clicking the wrong thing.
How many times have I said that? It's been a couple games.
It was fun watching you struggle through this game. Chris sitting there, this game's dumb.
Well, the last thing I would say would be scoring is kind of it's a slog to figure everything out because you're scoring for how many resources you got bonuses of what's in your warehouse, you got bonuses if you've gone and you have built a house or have a boat. There's a lot of different things to score. Fortunately, they do give you a score sheet, and you definitely need to use it.
Yeah.
But just be prepared to do some scoring. Do not just start throwing chips away when the game's over. You need to figure out what you have and what those points are going to be at the end of the game.
And I just think that, if you are a completionist or you're somebody that plays a board game and you want to be able to do everything, you should not buy this game. Because every game you won't be able to do everything. Yeah. That's just the purpose of this game. If it frustrates you, if you're like, I need to be able to access every single resource on this board,
no way.
This game's going to frustrate you to no end.
Yeah. And I think to know that early, putting this on the table, just know that starting the game. So, well, that's a great intro. So let's take it to Altiplano into the collector's corner. David, is Altiplano worth its weight in wool, or are we just getting fleeced here?
Ooh, this one's tough. So Altiplano's been out of print for a good while, but you can find random copies that pop up. Like right now, you can find somebody selling it on Amazon for $100, basically.
What?
And for a game that is hard to find, I don't know if I'd pay $100 for it. You can go on eBay right now. I just checked some eBay prices, and they're going. I found one for like $40, but even on BGG, like the cheapest copy right now on that is like $82. So it does hold its weight. I mean, I think there are deals to be had out there, but just know that if you want to get your hands on this copy of Altiplano, it could be a little bit difficult.
So that came out in 2017, and it's not even 10 years old. Is that normal for a game to go out of print like that, or?
I mean, it just depends on the print run and kind of what they are doing.
I can see where this would turn a lot of people off.
Okay.
But then I think if you like this kind of game and you're good for the puzzle, man, you're in it. But I can see where this isn't one that's going to appeal to a mass audience. If again, all the negatives we talked about, I think can really turn some people off potentially. Yeah. Maybe that's what did it, because early on still around, right?
Yeah, I think they came out with an expansion too. Didn't you have that? Yeah.
Yeah, they came out with expansion as well.
Yeah, so I was fortunate. I found my copy for $15, so I was pretty pleased with that.
5-finger discount there?
No, but I spent more on coins than the game.
Yeah.
But of course, we'll get to that in a minute or two.
Yeah. So, all right. So, final thoughts then. I guess taking it back to David, is this a game that you think is worth the investment?
Yeah, for me in my collection, I got a pretty good deal because I tend to bundle stuff together and look for different things and pick my timing, but. If you are into bag builders, I think that this is something that you want to have, because there's not many bag builders out there comparatively to like dice placement games or, worker placement games or just kind of other mechanics like deck builders. There's not as many bag builders, true bag builders out there. So I think if you like that and you collect those kind of games and you like pulling stuff out of bags, this is something you probably should have in your collection, because I just don't think there's a lot of them. So every time one comes up, if you're kind of collecting that route, I think it's something that is collectible.
Okay. Pete, how about for deluxifying this? Are there deluxified pieces? Could you do anything with this, you think?
Oh, yeah. They do have Geek Up bits for these as well. I looked on MapleSource. They're $40. There's 209 pieces with it. So, that's pretty good value if you're getting those. And again, they really do enhance the game, especially with the bag builders. That would be the way to go. The other thing that I did, again, since I got my at a pretty good price, I went online and I just bought some pesos for coins, because I was looking at how much we actually use the money, and they come out with a lot of money in the game, but really we never got up more than 10 coins. So
right.
I should have plenty with what I got.
Which makes me wonder, there's got to be other ways to play this, because we commented on that last time. Why is there, these 10 coin or 10-cent coins, we hardly ever get to them. And I think, David, you got to 10 cents once or something, and then you just started buying all the things you couldn't. But money is so tight.
Yeah, they even have 25-cent coins in there. It's crazy.
Like, what are those?
That's another one of those resources you'll never get.
Yeah.
Those are the 5-hour games of this where everybody can't buy anything.
Yeah. So, Chris, how about as the intellectual introvert? What are you thinking about this game?
Yeah, I like this game. I mean, it's a really, really heavy, deep puzzle, as we've talked about. But I like it to play it a couple of times, but I'm not going to be bringing this out every week.
Right.
It's just when I'm done, I'm done.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, my mind is spent.
Pack it up.
And whatever you're bringing out next, I just lose. Right. Because my mind's just too tired. But it's fun when that puzzle is going. It can be brutal if your puzzle's not going, because we mentioned earlier, it can stick around longer. But as you're figuring that out, and especially once you say, oh, okay, I see what I can do this game, and that clicks for you for, again, that puzzle that's in front of you, that game, that's a fun time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it too, as just a newbie, I would not recommend this game again as one of your big bag builders if you're into those. I would say Orleans before this game every single day of the week. And even that, again, I'm not encouraging anybody to start with Orleans. So, but again, if you do like bag builders, I first learned bag building with David when I think Quacks was one of the first games he taught me that was outside of the realm of Sorry and Mousetrap. So, I enjoy bag building games. I've really enjoyed these two games as we've played them, but they're heavy. Yeah, different, but good. I like them. All right, guys. Well, I think it's time to load up our wagons and head into the village for today's Battle of the Funnest.
All right, everyone, the moment of truth has arrived. It's time to separate the men from the boys, or more appropriately, the games from the toys. We're pitting these games head-to-head against each other in the ultimate face-off. In one corner, weighing in at 3.03 out of 5 with an overall BGG rating of 8.1. Trouvez dans le beau champ coulant de France, un membre fondateur de Chevalier de la table de jeu, capable de survivre à 3 flambeaux à moins de 2 horas. Le frère de Brocard, le maître de moine, le collier de Savon, vive la France, Orléans!
Put a croissant in it. Translation, please.
Yeah, okay. Found in the fine flowing fields of France, a founding member of the Knights of the Game Table, able to survive 3 plagues in less than 2 hours, the brocade brother, the master of monks, the scholar of scholars, vive la France, Orléans! In the other corner, weighing in at 3.29 out of 5 with an overall BGG rating of 7.5, scaling the Andes like an athletic alpaca, turning bread into fish whenever you wish, creating more drama than a mama llama in wool pajamas, the Grand Gazoo of High Plains, Peru, the Warehouse Warrior, the Cacao King, Altiplano! And now let's find out which one has it in the bag in our Battle of the Funnest Showdown. All right, guys, you remember how this works? We're going to evaluate these games head-to-head in 5 different categories: theme and production, mechanisms, value for your time, replayability, and the fun factor. We'll each choose which game we think outdoes the other in each category. The game that gets the most votes wins the category, and the game that wins the most categories takes the prize in our Battle of the Funnest. So let's let the cat out of the bag, starting with theme and production. Daniela.
All right, so for theme and production, Orleans, like I said a little bit earlier, it's brown, it's a little drab. I do think it has a better personal board that comes with it. Altiplano, I think, is beautiful. I do think that those are a bit small, too, and we're kind of hitting the table every single time we're playing that, and the chits are going all over. It's a little messier. Kind of reminds me of Polly Pocket, if you ever played with one of those growing up. Both need weightier pieces as it stands, but for this one, I'm going to go with Altiplano. David.
This one was tough for me. I think that when I look at both of them, there is stuff that was wrong with the production of Altiplano. Some of the pieces didn't function like they should have with the boxes and the player markers and stuff like that. But I'm somehow leaning still towards picking them. So I guess I'm just going to choose Altiplano. I do like that it's more colorful. I just like the modular board a little bit better. It does something different when I look at it on the table presence, and I like the theme. Nothing against Orleans. I think it's great, but it just doesn't stand out to me when I look at that box on the wall. Passing it over to Chris.
Yeah, I'm actually going to go with Orleans on this one. I don't know that either one necessarily blows it away. The theme with Altiplano, I think, comes through with me only because when you read the rule book, it says, man, it's really tough surviving up on the high plains. And I'm like, yeah, it's really tough going through that game. You're right. You nailed it there. But then you got the llama that falls apart. You got the cards that can't stay together and all that kind of stuff. Nothing fancy about Orleans, but there's a lot of boards. There's a lot of parts to it. The theme to me comes through. You're trying to get people. They're doing work for you. I like Orleans. I'll go with that and kick it over to Pete to see where we stand.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Altiplano. Aside from the llama that falls apart, my boxes, they stick together really good. So I don't know what, if you just had yours not put together or if the one I have is actually glued. I just think, production-wise, I think they're on par for each other than that spot. It's really the theme that pulls it in for me. So Altiplano.
All right, so 3-1. Altiplano takes theme and production. We'll now switch to mechanisms, and I'll start right back with you, Pete.
All right, well, I'm going to stay on the plains of Peru here, and I'm going to stick with Altiplano on that. I just think the the movement and the modular boards really ramp up the game for me. Mechanism wise, it feels more like you're actually buying and selling resources versus Orleans, where you're just moving people around. So Altiplano. Let's go over to David.
Okay, I think me and Pete are going to agree on this one for right now. I am also going to go with Altiplano for mechanisms. I do think they're both bag builders. I like the way Altiplano does a little bit better. I do like the fact that we get to clear out every time, kind of like more of like a deck builder. And I just think that it's a little bit crunchier as far as it's just harder to do things. And I tend to like that. So if it's not kind of your bow to tea, then don't pick this. But for me, I do like it a little bit heavier. So Altiplano kind of wins it and the bag builder for me. I'm going to switch it over to Daniela.
Yeah, so you guys have altitude sickness, so I'm going to head down to Orleans on this one because I think Orleans is just a little bit more straightforward. There's a lot of different things in Altiplano that you really got to get down to that crunchiness of it. And again, I don't mind that in a game, but I think it's a little too crunchy. You know, the one thing with Altiplano, the end scoring is... it's just a little chaotic. And I don't like when I'm looking at a board and I really don't know where anybody's standing. I can look at Orleans and see a little bit of who's got money, who's got different storehouses, who's got all that type of stuff. And so I think that was just a little bit more clean for me. So I'm going to go with Orleans. Chris.
So this is a great example of where different people like different things, and I'm going to go with Altiplano for the same reason you said. I think Orleans is relatively straightforward. I'm not sure it's doing anything unique with respect to its mechanisms, whereas Altiplano, man, that's a puzzle. And figuring out how you got to move in order to be able to do it, but you're using your chits to do that. The way they put those together, it's really tight. That's okay. Some people like them tight. I'm going to go with Altiplano, which means Altiplano wins the second one, 3-1, taking a 2-0 lead early over Orleans. Now we go to value for your time. I'm going to start this one. I'm going to go back to Orleans for this one. We mentioned earlier, Altiplano takes a little bit too long, and your brain hurts, at least my brain hurts, for at least the second half of that game, coming off of my brain hurting the first half of that game. Whereas Orleans, it seems like maybe sometimes seems a little bit too short, but that even feels like a good thing. We're like, oh man, I've only got a couple more turns to accomplish this. I think it's the right amount of time. I really enjoy it. I'm going with Orleans. I'll kick it over to Pete.
Yeah, I agree with you, Chris. The value for the time, if I'm going to do a bag builder, it's just a cleaner game, I think. You know, if I want to get that fix in, I would rather play Orleans over Altiplano. Daniela.
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys covered it all. So I'm sticking with Orleans on this one. If I'm snowed in, maybe I'll pull out Altiplano and, if I have got the time. But for the value for my time, I think Orleans really sets it forward. So, David.
Yeah, I'm going to make it a clean sweep. I'm going with Orleans on this one just for the fact that I'm always wanting to turn 2 or more. I don't think 18 is necessarily the right number if you're listening out there. But, the playtime on Altiplano just can run really long at the end. So value for my time, I'm going to go with Orleans on this.
All right, so Orleans sweeps it 4-0 in value for your time. We've actually seen 6 votes for each game right now, but Altiplano still has a 2-1 lead on categories. We'll go to replayability next. I'm going to start this one. I'm going to seesaw right back to Altiplano for here. I mentioned earlier, every game just seems different because there's certain things that are going to be open to you, certain things that aren't during the game, and therefore that game is different. You put that together with the modular board, and I think that the replayability, Altiplano just takes it away. So Altiplano for me on that one. David.
Yeah, I'm going to stick right with you on the planes over there. I'm going with Altiplano on this one. I think there's just great replayability. It does crunch your brain because every time it is a brand new puzzle, unfortunately. You have to solve that puzzle, and I feel like half the time it doesn't click until you're about at least a quarter of the way through of what you actually can do. You're kind of just muddling in the waters. But for me, I'm going to go with it on replayability because I do like the puzzle. I'm going over to Daniela.
Yeah, I mean, both of these games have frustrated the living tar out of me, honestly, in the last couple of weeks. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think it's that good. It does get your brain juices flowing, and you got to be ready to come in and play these games. I do have to psych myself up to play Altiplano a little bit more, but I'm going to stick with Altiplano on this one, just for the simple fact that every time you're playing, it is a new puzzle within a puzzle. You're not always going to get the pieces and things you want. Learn to adapt, overcome, and I like that. Orleans a little bit more samey in this. Pete.
Yeah, let's sweep it. Altiplano is there's just more replayability. You guys talked about that. The only other thing I would say, the unique starting player positions also. There's a lot of those tiles, so you could play the game 10 different times and start 10 different ways. So, just that out of the gate, I think it's that. I think if we didn't play with a lot of expansions yet either, though, I don't think. But I did read some posts on BGG that with the expansions, Orleans is a little bit better and might make it a more of a neck and neck race. But base game, I'm going to go with Altiplano.
All right, so Altiplano sweeps the plains 4-0 on replayability, takes a 3-1 lead, but now we come down to fun factor, which carries a lot of weight. David, let's go to you first.
Okay, for fun factor, I'm going to Orleans, and the reason why is because I just hear more people shouting things at their bags and stuff when they're pulling out, because there is a thing with Altiplano, you kind of know what's in your bag because you're going to empty out and you're going to draw. So eventually you're going to see everything in there, where I feel like Orleans is a true bag builder, kind of like in the veins of Quacks, where you're just pulling stuff out and you're hoping you get what you want, but a lot of times there's a lot of stuff in that bag and just the fun, unique mechanic. And I'm always looking for, when are people frustrated? When are they screaming at the table? And to me, that brings out the most fun because you're seeing it live, not over a computer screen. And I like to laugh at people's misery. So anyways, I'm kicking it over to Pete on this one.
Yeah, I'm with you, David. It's better at we're the fifth meeple. We play a lot of games with higher player counts. I do think that Orleans is better with a higher account versus Altiplano. The game just drags on. It feels like, for me, too long when there's more players. At 2 or 3, yeah, Altiplano's fine. But I think it's just a cleaner design, Orleans, so I'm sticking with that. Let's go over to Daniela.
Yeah, I'm staying with you guys on this and Orleans. I think if I'm rolling up everything as I'm playing the game, whether I'm doing the theme and production, the mechanisms, the fun factor, I think overall Orleans is going to just be that game that I'm getting a little bit more excited, I think, to play it. I got to psych myself up a little bit more to play Altiplano. Chris?
Yeah, we'll sweep this one for sure. I'm going to go with Orleans as well. To me, I can't put fun factor on with Orleans. I enjoy it. I'm not going to call that fun. I'll call it enjoyable. It's a cool puzzle, but I don't leave that going, man, that was fun, right? Orleans, there are some fun times. I did hear, I can't remember who it was, but I was listening to another podcast, and they were talking about, hey, what if this was reskinned to a different theme, and it was New Orleans or New Orleans, and you put some sort of, hey, instead of being in Orleans, you're in New Orleans, and there's some sort of jazzy theme to it. That could probably be a pretty fun time too. I feel like that's more appropriate for what I'm thinking with respect to having fun with this. I'm going to go with Orleans, which means 4-0. Orleans takes the fun factor. However, with the score of 3-2, Altiplano scales the mountain and wins today's Battle of the Funnest.
Well, folks, that brings us to the end of yet another episode of the Fifth Meeple Board Game Podcast. We hope you enjoyed what we pulled out of the bag today. Again, and I just want to ask everybody, if you are a regular listener, send us a review, Facebook, Instagram, anything you can do to reach out for us. We really, really would like to hear from you guys. And if you guys are regularly listening, just what this podcast either means, or if you'd like to hear anything new on this, anything that would just help us grow, we would love to hear for that. Thanks again for listening. And until next time, may life never leave you holding the bag. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening.
Play some more games.
Bud.
Wise.
Hard.
We're just going to do what's
We're a group of... hold on. Let me do that.
goodness.
The door was open and I got nervous.
You want me to shut the door?
Yeah. Just kind of give us some hips. Some hips. Pete needs a hip.
Give us 10 minutes.
Pete's looking for a hip.
Oh, I'm supposed to do the Orleans somewhere.
Oh, yeah. That's why I'm like, this
wake
doesn't
up,
make any
Chris.
sense. I'm like going right to the review.
I had another thought. I can't remember it, and I'm just going to stop talking right now and see if it comes to me.
Nice.
I'm dumb. I'm cutting a branch here. Right? guess where it fell?
On your face.
Right in my face. Yes. So I can still feel it on my
mild
lip.
concussion.
Like, come on, you're so dumb. It's like the cartoons where the guy that saw on the limb he's standing
branch.
on. Yeah. So it's just one step down from that.
May life never leave blank holding the bag. What? That's all.